Hello, and welcome to the Elevate Entrepreneur, where we decode the success of some of the greatest entrepreneurs that I've met, that I know, that I trust. These individuals have not only built their business up, but they've also impacted lives for the better. Here you will learn not only how to grow your business, but also inspire you to want to be just a little bit better. I'm your host, Raylan Davis. My entire intention is to remove obstacles and excuses as to why people can't realize they deserve more. With that being said, let's jump into this week's episode. Stay motivated, stay elevated. Today, I am joined by Julianne O'Connor. She helps high-profile companies and high-achieving CEOs and dentists to leverage their influence because they're often overworked and overwhelmed. And obviously, if you're listening to this, there's a really good chance, especially if you're a solopreneur, you're probably definitely overworked and overwhelmed. Miss O'Connor here provides dentists and their teams with powerful strategies and effective leadership branding, PR, social media, as well as quality of life burnout prevention. First and foremost, welcome to the Elevated Entrepreneur, Miss Julianne, and I appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So here's the first question, and I don't think it's talked often enough about people that are in the limelight or entrepreneurs, is walk me through your journey of getting here. Like first question that popped up for me is, why dentist? That was number one, because that's very specific. Talk about niching down. You crushed it there. Number two is, again, what was your background before getting to this place where you're helping them with PR, social media? Like there's such a huge combination of things you can help people with. So how did you get to this place?
So great questions. I won't give you the long version. I'll give you the short version. And then I'll get to the why dentist, which is hysterical because I fought that forever and then finally just accepted it and embraced it and went, you know what, this is it. And now everything has opened up around that. So yeah, if you've ever heard the saying, "A niche, you get rich," it's true. I absolutely recommend it for anyone. So I grew up on really contaminated property, actually, and outside of Reno, Nevada. And at the time that we discovered that the property was not something that anyone should inhabit, we started having to see doctors to find out if we were sick or not and all these things. And it led me on this journey because we would go in and doctors would tell us we'd likely get cancer from the toxins that we had been exposed to on this property. And my father had already passed away suddenly from lymphoma cancer, definitely related to it. And so I remember sitting with these doctors and asking them, hey, can you give me a date? Like, when will I get sick? Because if they could give me a date, I would work backwards from that date, is what I was thinking at the time. And I would build this really meaningful life with whatever time I had. And so and they wouldn't give me a date. They just were like, well, we don't know, you're not sick, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was this crazy thing where I started to go, okay, well, if you're stripped of everything that is seemingly important, all your material stuff, and you're down to, health and wellness, what do you really care about? And it's always fundamentally the people that you surround yourself with. And so I set out on a journey to really figure out what built meaningful relationships. And that led me into business and quality of life and all these things that were intriguing, but it was based on human psychology, just asking people so many questions. And so that's how I got started. And then in dentistry.
What were you doing? So during this time when you're like impending doom, by the way, that's stressful. Like you made the decision you made was I wanted to have greater impact. And the best way to do that is to be an entrepreneur. Was that the logic?
You know what? No, it wasn't even that simple. I probably complicated it much more than that. But the very first thing was, man, I might not have a lot of time. So what can I do that's fun? But I also knew I had to make money. And so I was, of course, working a job at the time. Well, not of course, you wouldn't know this, but for me, I was at a time period where I was working, I was in coming out of high school. And I decided, what I really wanted to do was go be an actor. And so I quit my job. I moved to LA, and then I started the acting scene. But with that, I was still having to make money, right? And in the beginning, you don't make money when you're an actor. And so it was this discovery. And at the same time, I cared about, I was always operating with this consciousness that, nobody else probably knows this, but I could get sick, and there was this kind of thing in the back of my mind that I just want to be around people that are cool. And so I just kept asking people about what worked, what didn't work. And then it led to business, me asking, well, what makes your job fun or not? And most people were complaining. And so I always wanted to do, what's that one the 1 in 10 doing different from all the rest. And that was what led me on, and then I was like, oh, I got to write a book about those, and so that's what changed everything for me.
Do you feel like looking back, that was kind of like your secret superpower, was this, again, weights? Because you didn't have the luxury anyway at the time. You didn't know if you had the luxury of time. So it's like, if I wanted to do something, I had to do it today, versus what I think a lot of entrepreneurs face is this, I got time.
Yeah.
I could do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. Like, you didn't have that luxury.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I was in such a hurry to hurry up and live and have a great life. It wasn't until, oh my gosh, embarrassingly, it wasn't until about 8 years ago that I went, whoa, wait a second, I can slow down. Like, I made it this far. I'm still alive. I'm still not sick. What the heck am I worried about? And then and people ask me now, if you had to do over again, what would you do different? I would actually do the opposite. I would relax. So I think there's a place to drive, but it's about, being driven with meaning behind the scenes. And I think I would just chill out and not be so stressed about it.
Well, there probably is like a good balance to have, but the first thing I think about is what is this thing? Memento mori, right? Remember, you will die.
Yeah.
And that's like the Stoics talk about that a lot, because having that memory that every day is a gift, like you're not promised today, actually can be a really good motivator to get the hell out of bed and do what you got to do to make an impact on the world. And so you kind of had a secret. It doesn't seem like it at the time, obviously, but you kind of had a secret power in your back pocket that you can kind of lean on when you needed it.
Yeah. I would even say that I went a step further and I started experimenting. I have a TEDx talk about this, actually, and it's fun for some people. It's called Alive and Counting. And it's this idea of experimenting with your imaginary death date. And so I started literally thinking to myself, okay, well, if I only had a year, what would I do? And nobody could give me the date. So I just said, okay, what if I had 5? Holy cow, what if I had 10 or 20 years? What would I do? Because that's a lot of time, right? We've all experimented with 6 months or a week, right? But who's thought about, oh, what if I have 30 years? What am I going to do that's meaningful and that's going to have an impact on the world? And what's my legacy going to look like? Do I care about a legacy, And so that's some of the stuff I was exploring.
Yeah. Okay. So then you had this idea, okay, I want to help people. You're asking people really good questions. Walk me through what happens next.
Yeah, so I moved to LA, ended up doing a lot of acting and playing around with always having a job. So I always had business going at the same time. And one thing led to another. I ended up, and I went to school for marketing. I always thought marketing was a really good background for anything you wanted to do as an entrepreneur. And I do remember being in LA and there was an earthquake while I was working a telemarketing job. And I just remember the coffee swishing in the coffee pot. I think I was working on Sherman Way in LA. And if you know where that is, it was a shitty place to be at the time. And I just looked around and the people were really mean. They were always yelling at you to follow the script, And I looked around and I was just like, I am sure not going to die here. And I was like, I quit. And then I had to get creative, right? So in the entrepreneurial world, we're always getting creative. And so I would still, explore marketing jobs oftentimes. But what happened that led me to dentistry specifically is I was doing marketing from place to place in different arenas. And I had a friend who was a dentist and he became a really good friend. And we were doing the art scene together and all sorts of things, his family, my family. And he started to introduce me to people. And then, I fought it for years and I was still trying to do it for everybody. And then I started to realize that, dentists are these really incredible people who are really hard to sell. But once you sell them, they're your best friends and they're so loyal. And so there was finally a day not long ago that I actually embraced it and started to say it out loud and say, I do this for dentists. And now, this week I'm being flown to Las Vegas to speak for a huge dental conference. I speak 3 days in a row, 4 different times, with doctors that are the highest level who don't even speak as much as me on these stages, and I'm so honored and grateful to have been elevated, but it has everything to do with just claiming it, owning it, and saying, I actually have something to gift these people that they don't have because I'm unique to their field. And so that's really what led me there.
That's so funny because it's like sometimes the universe kind of pushes you in these directions and you're like, no, I don't want to. And then once you embrace it, though, things can happen. Like I think about even with us, like we have for those that don't know, and I know you don't know this, but we have a podcast agency, right? So we focus on helping people start their show on YouTube and so on and so forth. And everyone and their mom can help you probably with podcasting. But it just so happened that when we started our agency, it was coaches and consultants that kept coming to us. Yeah. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to pigeonhole it to just these people. But then when you really think about it, it's like, especially for me, we have a lot of our clients are seasoned professionals. They're experienced as consultants, and they don't understand the basics of YouTube. They don't even know how to hit the damn record button, right? And so that's where we come in. They have no interest in it, but what they have to say is meaningful, like, you know, something that's important to me. So it's interesting how many times, like, I think you had to listen to that intuition and go like, yo, the universe is pointing you in a direction. You probably should listen a little bit.
Yeah, I would even say this. I had really magical insights during the pandemic because I ended up in these communities of people where they were mastermind groups, basically, of all different types of you know, entrepreneurs, basically sharing their struggles, sharing their solutions. And it was really incredible to see how many people did the same thing I did, fighting it, you know, and not understanding this is a gift. People are coming to you from this one place, and you think you're so important in this other place, or you're so much bigger and you're so much broader. But there's so much business in small places, and there's so much power. And the more focused and concentrated you are, you know, what a gift. And your niche is awesome. You know, it's a fun niche because people are very motivated and intrigued by what they're doing, you know? So
yeah, that's the goal, man. Like, find a group of people that, one, you're not one of a million, and you can make a difference, right? And then for these dentists, right, not nobody, very few people think about they're a business too. And by the way, I've met dentists, a lot of them, because in my past life, I worked in a med spa. I was a business development manager for a med spa once. And you'll be surprised at how many dentists also have, like, aesthetics. They have, like, lasers, and they also are a med spa. So I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of dentists, and they're freaking, not to mention too, like, obviously they're smart, they're doctors. That's an obvious thing. But it's a business, and they do really well. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but, like, multiple 7-figure little clinics, and you would never think about it, but they're sitting there and they need help too.
Yeah, it's incredible. And now dentistry has gone heavily corporate, so they're realizing slowly but surely that they need to have multiple locations, so they're having much higher net worth. So this will be funny to you, but I actually finally niched down so much that I say I help high-achieving dentists to leverage their influence. You know, I came up with my own whole tagline around it, and it resonates. And now people are coming to me, so I do private coaching for high achievers. Literally, what I started doing by creating this tagline is attracting the highest achievers. So I work with these multi-million-dollar dentists who want to leverage their influence. And so what's funny, we should partner because they want to do podcasts and they want to write books, and, you know, and I'm there to guide them with what's going to work for what they're trying to do. And I ground them back in quality of life. I always, if they don't get clear on why they're doing it, I won't work with them. And so I have a short list. I'm putting people on a wait list right now. But it's really powerful and it's really fun to work with them.
What would you say the difference is like a high achieving? Like, obviously they're self-selecting themselves as high achievers, but why high achievers? Like, granted, like, who wants to work with a mediocre business owner? But, like, why high achieving? Because my initial thought about high achievers is have you read the book Driven? Douglas Brockman.
I've heard it, and I haven't read it, and I'll put it on my...
Yes, please read it. So his whole take on it is it's like he talks a lot about ADHD and the superpower of ADHD, but a lot of high achievers are super short. Like, you get motivated highly about something and then it goes away, but that's also your gift. And so anyway, just read the book, it's amazing. But when I think about high achievers, I think about the pitfalls of that, which is I have very high highs, but I've also very low lows. And so it's those things of, like, if my vision doesn't come to fruition in 90 days, and it's funny because I built my business around this, which is if I have a new idea, if we don't launch it in 90 days, I know I'm going to get bored of that idea. And so our timetable for all projects is we have to execute 90 days. Because I know that after that I'll be done. So in 90 days, I have this timetable where we have to launch the idea and we have to give some of the aspects to team members so I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's my goal. If we don't do it, then I kill the project.
So I totally relate, by the way. And I think what my gift probably is that some of the skill sets that I'm able to gift to those high achievers in dentistry specifically. So what I see that's different or unique in dentistry is that they've developed all these technical skills, right? But they haven't done their personal development skills. They weren't taught in school mindset just as a fundamental. Most entrepreneurs who are really high achieving entrepreneurs, they know mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I recognized right away that skills that I had been learning and teaching 10 years ago would serve the doctors that I talk to now. And they're not there yet. And yet they're high achievers because they're technically skilled. So they're very different mindsets than me. And what I had to learn was how to present the fact that my skill sets, which are soft skills, can be technically, what do you want to say? That they can compute technically what they're getting out of it. So I'll literally have doctors come to me and they'll say, you know what, I just want to hire you just for the quality of life part. And that's it. And they don't want to even say it. They want, they're like, I already have a business coach. I don't need a business coach. I just want somebody to talk to me about life and why it's worth continuing this, right? But then what will happen, because they are technically driven, after a few sessions, I will see right away that they're not clear about what's the difference between coaching and therapy. They start to blur those lines. And I right away have to reel them in and start to tie everything again to goals, because that they understand. If they can tie it to results, then they're like, oh, okay, I'm doing this technical thing, right? But what they really want is this quality of life piece, and that's what they're benefiting from mostly.
I was thinking, like, what is the Trojan horse of this meeting? Meaning, do they come to you for marketing and then you go, by the way, you need quality of life? Or is it the other way around where you go, I need quality of life? Because I find it hard to believe, and that's not the right statement, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I find it hard to believe someone with self-selective, I suck with my quality of life, versus I need help with marketing. Everyone's like, yo, I need more leads. And then it's like, oh, maybe it's because the reason you're not getting more leads is because you're not clear on your purpose. You're not clear on why you show up every day, and that's showing up in your marketing. So what do you feel like comes to you first? Is it the quality of life, or is it they need help with marketing, PR, so on and so forth?
So now it's 100% quality of life, as hard to believe as that is. But in the beginning, it was always marketing. So I was selling them marketing, and then what would happen is I'd sit down, I'd be talking to them, okay, well, what do you want to do? What's your brand? What's it really mean to you? Blah, blah, blah. And then they would tell me about their life, including their marriage. And that was leading to coaching constantly. Now, because I have become known as an influence coach and a quality of life coach, people will literally come to me and say, hey, I just want the quality of life piece. And so, but it's because I have built a reputation. And yeah, it started leading from marketing into it. And now it's the flip because I also have such a short list that it's not easy to get on my list any longer. Yeah. But at the time, before I could take anybody. And now I'm very clear who I want to work with as well. And that was something else I fought. In the beginning, I was noticing what types of people. You mentioned this comment about, why high achievers? Because, there's so many things. It is the ADHD client, right? In fact, I went so far as to say I don't ever want to work with people who are on ADHD meds or certain things. In the beginning, I was sort of even resisting that. And then I started to go, wait a second, all of these people are in this category, and I have to get really, really clear on who and why. And once I was able to be that selective, then I could get really clear. But I stopped fighting who was coming to me. And there is an element of that thing you're saying, that ADHD vibe. But what I did discover is that a lot of that is based in trauma too, and childhood trauma. And so there's similar things related to that as well that puts us on survival mode, wires our brain on overdrive.
I was like blown away by this in that. So I know people that are in this community called the Juice Network. They're like 7-figure entrepreneurs, really high level marketers, so on and so forth. And there's this common thread, not just in that group, but in many different other masterminds of high level entrepreneurs. And there's 2 threads that are always there. And I'm saying always. Childhood trauma or addiction of some sort. And sometimes both. And it's funny because I'm going back to driven. They call the D4 allele, but it's this addiction gene. and this obsessive gene that, if not focused in the right way, can be a detriment. So like, I have a very addictive personality, and my wife jokes around because I'm addicted to things I'm not good at. So like, I have to do it until I'm good at it. That's why YouTube, marketing, like all that stuff. Like, I didn't start off as a marketer. I was a sales guy in corporate, and then I started liking marketing because, like, it's an old saying, but I hated marketing because they weren't giving me good leads. So I started learning marketing so I could figure out how I can get better leads. But anyway, I have that addictive. I'm just fortunate that it never led to alcohol or drugs, but I still have that addiction. And it's so interesting to me how many high level achievers have it. But that's the thing that makes them great too, though, is that addiction to, like, I need to be better. Like, I want to figure this out. I want to do this. And so I absolutely love that you're helping people with this. My next thing I wanted to ask you, though, was about, what do you mean by influence coach and leveraging your influence? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I have found is that you've got all these people who are high achievers, right? And then what they do is they spin their wheels. They go so fast. They work so hard. They hit these pinnacles. And it always sort of reminds me of the scene in the movie Frozen. And I have small children, so you have to.
I have a 4-year-old.
How old?
With you. 4.
Okay, I have a 4-year-old too. She turns 5 next week. Yeah, so I adopted actually my little 4-year-old, and I'm about to adopt her baby sis. So, but they're amazing, and talk about a reflection, right? But they, in that scene where the Elsa's shooting the ice, and then the sister's jumping higher and higher and higher, and pretty soon she's gonna fall, right? Well, it's the same with high achievers, right? They hit these pinnacles, they get these awards, they get these, the next pinnacle of whatever, and eventually they still have to face the numb of day-to-day life, right? At some point, the high doesn't sustain them, right?
The numb of day-to-day life.
Yeah. So, so I think that there's something about that, just that visual, that reflection that when I work with my dentist, what I would do is sort of reel them back in to help them to come up with coping tools for the day-to-day, right? And all of that is fundamentally based in meaning and purpose. And beneath all of that, really nobody gives a shit about your awards, right? It helps you to get to the next thing. I mean, we take all of these credentials, writing a book or doing our podcast, and all of that is used for the next thing. But if we stay grounded and connected with what is the most enjoyable to us, if the world was going to shit, which some days it is, what really matters? And it's always the people that you surround yourself with. It's your children, it's your family, it's the people you love, it's the people that make you laugh. And, so I really, when I work with these guys, I'm helping them to get back to what they're destroying in their chase for the next thing without realizing one day it won't matter. And so I'm just helping them to get to that place where they remember why they're doing it. So sometimes I'll take them through exercises that help them go, oh, whoa, this thing I think I need to achieve is actually taking me further away from the reason I wanted to achieve it.
Yeah. So I'm always fascinated with this idea that purpose comes from pain.
Purpose what?
Purpose comes from pain.
Oh.
And what I find very interesting about your journey is that I could see why this purpose for you and helping people live, that's what you're doing, helping people live the day-to-day. Tell me if I'm off, but do you see how this connects so well with like your beginning and like I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know when I'm going to get sick and if I'm going to die. So I have to learn how to live today. And that's kind of what you're doing for these dentists. Is that fair? Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's exactly what it is. So I think if you've never had a near-death experience, for example, and it's crazy to me how many people who haven't really experienced that, or they weren't aware enough to turn it into something that was meaningful for them when it happened. They just kind of let it slide. Okay, had a near-death experience, so I'm going to move back on like death is not real. And so, in a lot of what happens with a lot of my clients is they come from crazy stories. You'll see where I have this common thing where they've come out of war zones, literally, and they've come to this country and they were sent alone as children to go make something for the family, and dentistry or doctors were the thing, from certain countries, that was the thing. And so what happened is they came over here and they had two choices. It was go live on the streets and be addicted, or it was pick yourself up and go make something for the family. And so they did wire their brain on survival, right? And then in order to change that, you really have to rewire the brain, which takes a long time, and it takes a super level of consciousness about how you live day to day in order to start to reel it back in and then reconnect with your family, because these are people who met their families after they were already stuck on overdrive. And so now their families love them, they're impressed by them, but now they're pushing their families away because they never spend time with them. And I'll do these burnout prevention groups, and I'll be asked to come in and speak on self-care or whatever for groups of doctors. I mean, these are doctors, come on, I'm not a doctor. And you would think that they would already have this figured out, but they literally, get into their 60s or somewhere around there, and they say, if I had it to do over again, I would never have done this. I have destroyed my relationships with my children. I've destroyed my relationships with my spouse. I'm divorced now. Now I have back problems and constant pain, and I can't get my health back. It's just crazy. And yet it's not necessary. And so I help them to take from where they're at and go ahead and find the good in that, right? And learn to live again. Or young people have the opportunity to do it differently.
How can you, this brings me to this, which is like, how can we have both? Like, I don't think that, I don't see a reason why I can't build the huge business that I want and be an awesome father, awesome husband. The question, I think, then is how do you do both?
Yeah, I love that question. So, and I'm sure you've probably been experimenting with this already, but I 100% believe you can do both. And I look at people like Oprah and say, hey, I've got the same number of hours in the day. There's no reason. I look at Tony Robbins and go, okay, if he can manage 56 or 65 businesses, I can. I literally say that to myself, not to be arrogant, but the truth is, why can't I? And still be a great mom and still, take care of my husband. I believe you can do both. And I believe that really fundamentally, again, it's just being grounded in not forgetting that you have these things that have meaning that are not just the business. So we tend to get caught up. And so, I'm a big fan of some of the philosophies that people like Tim Ferriss have, where, short, fast goals like what you do, because we get bored and or we give ourselves too much time. And then what we do is we spend too much time doing things we could have done in 2 weeks. We take 6 months to do it. And that's why we waste time and we don't spend it with our family. So you do it and schedule block time, drive, like do it, get on it because it matters that you get next week off with your kids, like, so cram it in, go for it. Why not? Don't kill yourself. Don't hurt yourself doing it. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we have so much power in spurts. Why don't we use it and then go and also have these incredible, meaningful times, or put it into your legacy or what you want to give back to the world or the impact you want to have, inspire other people, whatever it is.
Like, I remember, because it reminds me that I had a mentor when I first started. It was the first consultant that I met, and he inspired me to be a consultant. And he came into my company, and I remember him saying that he does like $1 million deals, and it blew me away. I was like, that's a thing? Like, you could do that? And by the way, the stuff that he was teaching was all based on, I had a background in sports, and it was all about how you can be a coach, and like for your people, and how everyone has a coach. And I was like, holy shit, I could do this. And anyway, I remember talking to him because he had found out that I was working my ass off. I was super young. I was like 25. I was it didn't matter. I was like pretty high up in the company, and I was working a lot. And he goes, Raylan, it's really awesome that you're working 60, 70 hours a week, but you can't do that forever. And he goes, people think that life is a marathon, and what I have found to be true is that life is a series of sprints followed by extreme rest. And ever since then, I started to do this thing where, again, with help from my my boss at the time, because I do have a very addictive personality, and I can tend to be a workaholic, that I would, and I do this now, and as an entrepreneur, is I'll work my ass off. Like, I literally try to burn myself out, but then I'll take a week and I'm gone. You can't reach me. You can't call me. Like, me and my wife, we're off. Mm-hmm. And it's seemed to work for me. So I'm very aligned with the idea of like, let's sprint. Let's go as hard as we can. And then let's relax. Like, when I mean relax, I mean, Julianne, I'm dead. Like, I don't even exist. You know what I mean?
No, I'm very similar. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I have a very similar, and not everybody's way. Some people are very, they're all about pacing it. Even I just remember even in high school, I didn't ever want to run long periods. I would sprint. I would be the sprinter. And so it's funny that you said that, because now I'm thinking back on it, going, oh yeah, that was me. Sprint it out and then just go chill. Whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it's not, I think everybody's a little bit different, right? But I think when you have true meaning and you have things that you're really looking forward to, and part of that can be rest, part of it can be that downtime, and part of it can be the time that comes after hitting those pinnacles, right? It's when people think that those pinnacles are sustainable or that you can sprint the whole time. That's when it becomes a problem. And that's what you see a lot of times in dentistry, is people continue to sprint and they're hurting themselves, and they know they are, and yet they don't know what to do to stop, because they also wear this title that makes everybody depend on them in their mind. And what they're just needing to learn is that they can be imperfect. And what people really love is actually the part that is imperfect. It's the part that is human. And so you can have all of that great stuff, but if you don't have the human side and you don't let people see you vulnerable, then what the hell's the point? You're not going to inspire anybody. Nobody's inspired by people who are always at the top. They're inspired by people who are at the top, who started somewhere else or fumbled at some point along the path, and then share how they fixed it or how they changed it.
Yeah, I had a friend that said this, you should share, because we were talking about content at the time, and shout out to Molly Dare. She said, you should always share from a scar, not a wound. And it helped me remember, like, when we're telling our stories, I can't stand the content where it's like, yeah, I'm miserable today. And it's like, oh wait, that was it? Like, you just came on here to complain about your life? And then, but the compelling stories of the Oprahs, of the Tony Robbins, of the whoever you look up to, the stories that are the best is, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know this or that, and now I'm here. Like, here's how I solved it. Because there's a purpose to it, right? Like, we love storytelling. And I feel like I want to talk to you a little bit about the marketing component. So are you still helping them with marketing? And then I kind of found the through line here a little bit, which is like the idea of marketing on purpose. So meaning, like, you help them get clear on their purpose almost, and then that leads to the better marketing. Am I off, or does that sound accurate?
And that's absolutely accurate. Yeah. So, I feel like people create brands sometimes because they're sitting around trying to think of what is going to resonate with people, but they don't stop and figure out what resonates with themselves. So I think you have to put yourself in a place where you really look at, why does this matter? Why is it meaningful to you? I was having dinner the other night with somebody that I work with who actually really owns this social media company that I've worked with for 10 years. And marketing company, and he was telling me this story. He runs many companies, and he was telling me this story about an experience he had where he walked into some little shop that he didn't even actually want to go in, but decided to go in, and it was a friend of his that ran it, and he decided to go say hello or whatever. And he went to buy something, and the guy wrote down a number on a piece of paper, like some 100,000 or something. And he's like, what did you just write down? And the guy was like, oh, you just fed so many people. And he said, I wrote down the number of people we've fed because you bought this thing. And so that led to a conversation about, what do you mean? How'd you do that? And then they started talking about feeding the hungry. And then now that guy has gone and implemented it in his business. And he just shared with me this article that's in this big, massive magazine talking about them serving, their goal is to serve 1 million meals, Yeah. And I really was totally moved by just this idea that we can tie our story into, if it really matters, we can tie our story into something and it will matter for somebody else too. If it mattered truly for us, then some other human being will care. And you're not for everybody, but you are for somebody. And so if you can just take what matters and tie it in, then it's all gonna, in the end, it makes a difference. And so, but you got to find your own niche, again, it's not, and you have to be okay with not trying to make everybody happy or enroll everybody in your vision, because everyone's got different visions. Yeah. But if they collaborate with you, cool, the more the merrier.
It took me a while to kind of figure that out too. Like even now, like there's a couple people we just turned down for the podcast agency. And the reason why, it's interesting, and I'm getting better at wording it the right way. And this is not what I said to them, Julianne, but their thing was boring. Like, because it was all about making money. And it's like, me and my team watch every second of these videos that we produce, like for YouTube. And if I'm not moved by it, if I'm not curious about it, then I can't do it justice. Does that make sense? So like, but it took me a minute to figure out, I'm not for everybody. Like, if there's not a purpose behind your brand and what you're doing, and honestly, it's just, and listen, here's the truth. If you want marketing to make money and that's the only reason, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not the person, because I get bored. You can sell anything.
I say the same thing about speaking. Like, there are people who speak from stage to sell, and I get it, and there's nothing wrong with it. For me, I speak to change one person's life in that audience. And people say, why aren't you ever nervous in front of big, huge crowds? It's because I don't show up to get a reaction. If they laugh, they laugh. If they don't, that's okay too. But one person can be changed, and that matters. One person's life can be saved because of me. And if that's the truth, then it's worth it to me. Somebody asked me about a recent book that I'm working on right now, and they said, well, why are you doing this? And I was like, because I know it's going to save somebody's life. And I'm like, if it just saves it, and they're like, what's the cost if you don't do it? I was like, then I'm not going to save that person's life. That's huge. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands. It doesn't have to be millions. It can just be one, and it matters.
So the last thing I want to kind of get into, and then we'll finish up here, because, by the way, you're blowing my mind right now. I'm having a lot of fun with this. Like, you got my brain going. Is the speaking, right? Was that a hard transition in terms of, like, you elevating? Because I feel like we're always set, like, I don't know if it's seasons or what, but, like, we get these moments where it's time to elevate. And I'm curious, was that a hard transition for you to get over yourself and go, this is a new vehicle for me to affect more change? Because, like, I had this moment, I was actually in my time of rest. We went on a mini moon. I just got married. The only reason I don't have my ring on right now is because I've been playing with it under the desk and I dropped it and I didn't want to bend over to pick it up. That's the only reason I have my ring on right now. Just so in case my wife watches this. I have it on. It's just, I was playing with it. It fell. It's under the desk. I can't find it with my foot. Anyway. But I was walking by the book section, and I told myself forever, I have no interest in speaking. I have no interest in writing books. I had this story. I was telling myself about it, whatever. And then I picked up a book, and I'm not going to say the book because I don't want to act like I'm talking crap about the book, but I was looking about the book, and it's Amazon bestseller, New York Times bestseller. And I was like, I could write this book. Like, everything in there, I would word it differently. There's things I have to say on the subject. It was the first time I ever, like, announced it to myself that I was like, I'm going to write a book. My point is, though, in that thought, and the same thing about speaking, right? I had a decision I made that I'm going to start speaking. Here is the funny thing that came up. As soon as I made that idea, or I set that intention, all the thoughts came in. You're not a good writer. You don't know how to set up speech because you wing everything you do. Like, it was interesting to me how, because I'm ready to elevate, how many things popped up for me. So I'm curious for your journey and when you decided to be a speaker, what was that like for you?
Okay, so first, going to the book comment. So I have a dentist friend who literally wrote a book because I wrote a book, and he said, if she could do it, I could do it. I'm like, screw you. But the truth is, he really did, and he went and he wrote a book. And it's a joke to us still, because he'll get up on stage and say, I wrote a book because she wrote a book, and I said she can do it. So yeah, anybody can write a book, right? Every book has typos. I think about it, and even if you don't want to write a book or you have self-confidence issues, I had lunch with Mark Victor Hansen, most, sold author on the planet, did the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and I had 3 hours with him hearing his story. And it's incredible because there are people like him who will write your book for you, right? If you wanted to do it through interviews, there's no excuse not to write a book if you have a book in you. On the other side of that is, I didn't set out to write a book. I just wanted to share what I had to share. And I was like so tired of people telling people the same story about what the 1 in 10 did different, for relationships and careers, that I just said, I'll just put this in a book, and I didn't want to learn publishing. So I got a publisher. And so there's things that you can do, right? When I did my book tour, just to give you an example, I was so bored by doing book signings in bookstores. Like, it was the most boring, monotonous thing on the planet for me to do. He picked it up.
I got it.
And so, you know what I did? I booked all of my book signings at wineries. I just went on a complete wine tour, and I just started calling them and having other people call and say, hey, I'm a new author. Will you, host a book signing? I had tons of people who came to those.
Dude, wine, books, let's go.
So for speaking again was, when you write a book or you do a podcast or anything, you're a speaker already, right? Mm-hmm. And I think speaking was a lot of fun for me. I realize it's not for everybody, but to me, to walk up on a stage and literally let go of my ego, that is a constant fun practice to be able to master ego. And so I literally do it for that reason, partially, is that I get to go and not, and so I'll get up on stage and literally take things like, and I don't want to repeat my same stories over and over and over. Some days, at first I was always told, oh, great speakers tell the same story over and over. I was like, that's so boring. And so I started trying to come up with new things every day that would inspire. And so I would show up to, on stage and tell my story about how that morning I couldn't find a matching pair of socks and lift my slacks up and show them that I had two different socks on, stupid shit. But it made people laugh, and it immediately created a rapport. And then it was so fun for me to not worry about whether I had it all figured out. And one of my favorite speakers was somebody I spoke on stage with, but this woman flew in. She's married to a super famous football player, a super well-known actor. She gets up on stage and she's like, hey, this whole thing is about relationships. It's like, the most beautiful high-end, the sponsored gifts were like, super high-end watches that we all got, really high-end. She jumps up on stage. She's like, I just flew in. I stopped by. She's the keynote speaker, okay? And she's like, and I just, they wanted me to come in and speak about relationships. And, well, man, I don't know what to tell you, but my relationship's in the shitter right now. She was like, it's bad. It's really bad. She's like, I don't even know if I want to stay married right now. And I just remember cracking up, dying, laughing, going, oh my God, this woman is so real and so authentic, and how touching and how moving. If I can live my life on stage that way, where I show up every day as my most authentic self, truly trying to find anything to pour into people, but coming from where I'm at, then I've lived my life. That's it. And so that's my only advice on speaking, is just be yourself.
Yeah, I'm more aligned with you. I had a great talk. He's a brilliant guy, but I had a great talk on the podcast recently with a speaking coach. And he said, did you know, like, some of the best speakers out there had like the same 4 speeches they do? And I was like, that makes me want to die. Like, I could never do that. Like, I would need to do something else. And he was like, well, I mean, you can. And I was like, okay, good. Because that's what I would do. Like, because I can't. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's that D4 allele again. Like, I would, like, after doing it twice, I'd be like, ugh, like, it's time to come up with something new.
Talk I ever did was my TED Talk, because they made me rehearse. And I was supposed to do it verbatim. And I literally had my speech. I hadn't written my speech when I pitched it, and they accepted me. And then I had 2 weeks. At first, I had a year and a half to prepare. And then they're like, we have a cancellation. Can you do it on this date? And it was all around me. It was a salon version. So the whole thing was set up around just me as the speaker. And I literally had to tape my speech in front of me to do it on Zoom, to rehearse with this huge team of people who are criticizing. And they're like, you know what? I think we're going to have to do that again. And we only have 2 weeks. And it was so horrible, because I didn't want to have to do it the same over and over again. And so I just kept reading it badly. And I just knew in the back of my mind, the day I show up, I'm going to scrap this speech and I'm going to say whatever I want. And that is exactly what I did. And then the team came up to me after. They're like, you killed it. And I'm cracking up. I'm like, yeah, because you don't even know what I had said before anymore. So ridiculous. I thought I'd do a couple TED Talks. I don't care to ever do another TED Talk. So there you go.
Well, you did it. But you did it. I feel like that's part of it. Well, listen, this was amazing. And I think you're probably one of the more, like, anyone that's really big on purpose and is helping people live in their purpose, I'm there for. Like, so this was amazing. And I know you're helping a lot of people. And even if they're not dentists, they're going to get a lot out of this, because I know I did. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're amazing. Thank you all for listening, and stay motivated, stay elevated. Thank you for listening to The Elevated Entrepreneur. If you want to check out more about the guest, look at the description below. And as always, if you're a beginner coach or even someone that's seasoned and you're looking to join a community of like-minded individuals, learn about branding, lead generation, sales, you name it, think about applying to the Elevated Coaches Academy. You can learn more about that in the description below. I look forward to having you in the next episode. We'll talk to you soon. Stay motivated, stay elevated.